I was sorting through old mail when I found it. An envelope with my name written in neat, careful handwriting. No return address. Just Margaret Hayes in blue ink. For a moment, I thought it was another charity letter or some forgotten bill. But when I turned it over, I froze. The handwriting looked familiar. Too familiar. My hands shook as I opened it. "Dear Mrs. Hayes," it began. "You don't know me, but my name is David Reed. My father, Thomas Reed, passed away last winter. In his final days, he spoke often about you. I wanted to meet you, to thank you for being part of his story." The words blurred as I read them again and again. Thomas Reed. 50 years vanished in a heartbeat. I hadn't heard that name in half a century. Not since the summer I met him. The man who made me believe in love before life told me I couldn't have it. I remembered his laughter, his old camera, his voice saying, "One day, I'll take a photo that'll stop time." He had been the first man who ever truly saw me. And then, just as suddenly, he was gone off to a job overseas. We promised to write. We never did. And now, he was gone forever. But his son was reaching out. I placed the letter on the table beside my cup of tea. The spoon trembled in my hand. For years, I'd believed my story was finished. My husband, John, had passed 6 years ago. My children called on weekends. My life had settled into silence. Books, gardening, morning walks by the lake. Peaceful, predictable. Until this letter arrived. I read it again that night before bed. There was a phone number at the bottom, written smaller, as if he wasn't sure I'd call. For 3 days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time the phone rang, my heart leapt. Every time it didn't, I told myself not to care. On the 4th day, I finally dialed. "Hello." A warm, steady voice answered. "Mr. Reed." I said, "This is Margaret Hayes." There was a pause, then a gentle laugh. "You actually called. I wasn't sure you would." Something in his tone reminded me of his father. Calm, kind, curious. I wasn't sure either, I admitted. "It's been a long time since I heard that name." "I know," he said quietly. "Dad spoke of you often. Said you taught him what it meant to be seen." The silence that followed felt heavy but not uncomfortable. Like two strangers standing in the same memory. He told me about his father's final months. How he kept an old photograph by his bedside. A black and white picture of a young woman by a lake, smiling at something behind the camera. He said that smile got him through some hard days. David said softly. I couldn't speak. My throat closed. That photo, I remembered it. He'd taken it on our last day together. I felt tears on my cheeks before I realized I was crying, Mrs. Hayes. He asked gently. "I'm here," I whispered. "It's just strange hearing about the past from someone who wasn't there." He hesitated. "Maybe I shouldn't ask this, but could we meet? I'll be in your town next week. I'd like to hear your side of the story." I almost said no. What was the point? I was 72. My past belonged in boxes, not coffee shops. But something about the way he said it, calm, respectful, not pushy, made me say yes. When the day came, I almost didn't go. I stood by the mirror, scolding myself for being nervous. Then I put on my blue coat, the one John used to say made me look alive, and drove to the little cafe by the lake. The sky was grey, the wind sharp. I told myself I'd stay 15 minutes. Then I saw him. He was sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a mug. When he looked up, I gasped. He had his father's eyes. The same calm, searching blue. The same slight tilt of the head when he smiled. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, standing. "Margaret," I corrected softly. He grinned. "Then call me David." We talked. At first about simple things, weather, travel, coffee. But soon it became more. Memories, feelings, questions neither of us expected to ask. He told me his father had never stopped wondering what happened to me, that he'd even planned a trip back years ago, but life had other plans. I told him I often wondered what might have been. He nodded, not out of pity, but understanding. When we finally stood to leave, the sun was setting over the lake, painting everything gold. He said, "Would you mind if I saw you again? Just to keep talking?" My heart fluttered, not like a young girl's, but like someone remembering what warmth felt like. "I'd like that," I said. He smiled, and for a moment, I swear I saw him, the man I loved all those years ago, standing behind his son's eyes. But as I turned to leave, David called after me, his voice hesitant. "Margaret, there's something I should have told you earlier." I stopped. "What is it?" He took a breath, looking suddenly uncertain. "Before my father passed, he left me something. A letter. For you." The cafe fell silent. My heart thudded in my chest. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out an old yellow envelope and said quietly, "He wanted me to give it to you. Only when the time felt right." The letter sat between us, yellowed with time, the edges soft as if it had been carried for years. David placed it gently on the table. "He told me to give it to you when it felt right," he said quietly. My fingers hovered over it, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. "It's strange," I whispered. "All these years I thought he forgot me." David gave a small smile. He never did. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. The memories began to stir slowly at first, then all at once. 50 years earlier, the rain had been falling hard that day. I was 22, working at the town library, reshelving books no one borrowed. That's where I first saw him, tall, drenched, laughing softly as he tried to shake water off his coat without making a scene. "Storm caught you too, huh?" I said, handing him a towel from behind the desk. He grinned. I was chasing a photo, and the photo won. He showed me his camera, old and scuffed. "I was trying to capture the lightning over the lake," he said. "Didn't realize the lightning might try to capture me instead." I laughed, and that was it. That's how it began. From that day, he came back every afternoon. Sometimes he'd bring photos, sometimes coffee, sometimes just silence. I never asked why. I liked the quiet between us, the kind that felt full, not empty. He told me about his dreams. "One day I'll travel. Take photos of everything people forget to look at," he said. "Like the space between words, the way someone exhales when they're thinking." I told him about mine. "I want to write," I said. "Stories about people who almost fall in love, but don't. Because that's real life." He smiled at that. "And maybe write about me," he teased. "I'm good at almost." One afternoon, he found me sitting by the window, tears in my eyes. My mother had just told me John, my family's choice for me, was coming home from overseas. The wedding, she said, was to be announced soon. Tom sat down beside me quietly. "You don't look happy," he said. "I should be," I whispered. "He's kind. He's safe. But when I picture my life with him, I feel nothing." He didn't answer. He just reached over and placed one of his photographs on the table. It was a picture of me reading, sunlight in my hair, lost in a world no one else could see. "I took this yesterday," he said. "You looked alive." I looked at him, then really looked, and everything inside me shifted. We didn't say we loved each other. We didn't need to. It was there. In the silence between our words, in the way he memorized my every glance. The last day came faster than I expected. He was leaving for Paris, offered a photography job he couldn't refuse. Just for a year, he said, brushing rain from my cheek. Then I'll come back. We'll see where life takes us. I nodded, trying to be brave. Write to me, I said. He smiled. Every week. You'll get tired of me. We met at the lake before he left. He took one last photo of me standing by the water, wind in my hair, eyes full of everything I couldn't say. Then he kissed my hand and said softly, Don't wait for me. But if we ever find each other again, let it be because we're meant to. I waited anyway. For months I watched the mail, heart leaping at every envelope. But his letters never came. Not one. Eventually I married John. I built a life, had children, learned to smile again. But some nights, I'd wake up thinking I heard his voice saying my name through the rain dot, and now, 50 years later, his son sat across from me holding a letter that might explain everything. Do you want to read it alone? David asked, or I nodded. Yes, but maybe stay. My fingers trembled as I slid the paper out. His handwriting was the same uneven, full of energy. My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, it means I didn't find my way back to you in time. I tried. God knows I tried. I pressed my hand to my mouth. The letters I wrote, they were returned. Your family moved. I thought you'd gone on, built your life. I didn't want to disturb your peace. But not a day passed that I didn't think of you by that window, sunlight in your hair. I felt the years collapsing in on me, the ache of what could have been. You once said real stories are about people who almost fall in love. I think ours was one. But I hope, when this reaches you, you'll know that you were the love I never stopped carrying. Tears blurred the ink. At the bottom, in faded pen, he had written one last line. If life is kind, maybe my son will find you. He deserves to meet the woman who made his father believe in forever. I looked up, heart pounding. He wanted this, I whispered. David nodded, eyes glistening. He did. And there's something else. He reached into his bag and pulled out a worn photograph. The same one he'd mentioned on the phone dot. It was me, standing by the lake, 50 years ago. But beside me, just barely visible, was someone else, a small boy holding my hand. I frowned. That can't be right. There was no child that day. David hesitated. That's what I thought too, he said, until I looked closer at the date on the back. He turned the photo over. The ink was faded but clear. August 12, 1973. The day before I left. And below it, in smaller handwriting, for Margaret and our son. The photo lay between us, trembling slightly in my hands. The edges had faded, but that wasn't what made my heart race. It was the boy in the picture, small, maybe 3 or 4 years old, standing beside me by the lake, holding my hand. That can't be right, I whispered. There was no child that day. I was alone. David leaned forward, his brow furrowed. I thought it was a trick of the light, but I've looked at it 100 times, Margaret. The boy's face. It's clear. He turned the photo toward me again. This time I saw what he meant. The little boy's hair curled the same way mine used to when I was young. His eyes. I froze. They looked exactly like Tom's. Could it be someone else's child? David asked gently. I don't know, I said, though a strange ache spread through my chest. That day, there was no one else. Just Tom and me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, the rain began to fall, soft and steady, like time itself was remembering. Then David said, Maybe we shouldn't guess. Maybe it's better if we find out. We met again 2 days later. Same cafe, same table by the window. I'd spent those 2 days digging through my attic, through boxes I hadn't opened in decades. Old letters, faded postcards, even my journal from that summer. Nothing explained the photograph. When he arrived, he looked tired but determined. "I've been thinking about that photo all night," he said. "My father never mentioned a child. Not once. But he kept that picture until he died. So whoever that boy is, he meant something." I nodded. "And somehow, so do I." He looked at me with quiet understanding. "You've been in my life for weeks, and it already feels like I've known you longer." Maybe that's what he meant when he said you changed him. There was a warmth in his words, gentle but close. I felt it settle between us like an old song returning. "David," I said softly, "I don't think your father ever stopped loving me." "I don't think you did either," he said. We both smiled sadly, knowing it was true. Later that afternoon, we walked along the lake, the same one from the photo. The clouds had broken, and the light shimmered on the water. Every step felt like a memory returning. He stopped suddenly. "You know, I've always wondered why my father never talked about my mother. Not once. I grew up with my grandparents. They said she died when I was little." I turned to him. "You never saw a photo of her?" He shook his head. "No. My grandparents said he threw everything away after she passed. Said it hurt too much." I felt my pulse quicken. The boy in the photo. The missing mother. The silence. Pieces began to shift in my mind, but the picture wasn't clear yet. Only a feeling, a quiet knowing I didn't dare name. "Do you think she could have known him before?" I asked carefully. "I've wondered," he said, "that they would have been from different worlds. Dad lived in New England most of his life. She was someone he met overseas, they said. But no one ever showed me proof." He looked at the photo again, frowning slightly. "There's something about that lake. I feel like I've seen it before. Not here, but in dreams. Strange, isn't it?" I tried to smile, but my throat tightened. He tucked the photograph back into its envelope. "Whatever this means, I think we were meant to find it together." I nodded. Maybe we were. We stopped at a small bench overlooking the water. The wind lifted his hair, and for a second, I saw Tom. The same thoughtful tilt of his head, the same quiet strength. "You remind me of him," I said, almost to myself. He looked at me, and his voice softened. "I feel like I've known you longer than I should. Like part of me remembers you." I met his gaze, and time folded, the present and past colliding in one fragile heartbeat. He smiled faintly. "When I first wrote you that letter, I thought it was just about closure. But now, I don't think it is." "What do you think it is, then?" I asked. He hesitated. "Maybe it's a beginning." For a moment, neither of us looked away. The world around us blurred, only his voice, the wind, the shimmer of the lake. Then, as if afraid of what he'd said, he looked down and changed the subject. "I did find one more thing," he said quickly. "In my father's old box." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a folded note, newer than the first letter. The handwriting was still Tom's, but shakier. It said, "If you ever meet Margaret, tell her the truth about that summer. Tell her I didn't mean to leave her twice." Leave her twice. David read aloud. "What does that mean?" My breath caught. The sound of the waves grew louder, almost echoing his question. I took the note, my heart pounding. I remembered that summer again. The missed calls, the silence, my mother's tearful warning to let him go. And suddenly, I realized something she'd said the day before I married John. "Some truths, Margaret, are best left buried. For your own peace." Maybe she hadn't been talking about love at all. David touched my hand gently. "Margaret, you look pale. What is it?" I looked up at him, at the man who carried his father's eyes, his voice, his warmth, and whispered, "David, I think your father didn't just leave a photograph." He frowned. "Then what did he leave?" My voice trembled. "A piece of himself." He stared at me, confused, searching my face for answers. And in that moment, with the sun falling behind the lake, the past pressing against the present, I finally understood what the photograph had been trying to tell us all along. But I wasn't ready to say it yet. We sat in silence as the last of the sunset faded over the lake. The letter lay between us. His father's handwriting, soft, trembling, unfinished. "Leave her twice," David said quietly. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt tight, my heart thudding in a rhythm I hadn't felt in decades. He leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Margaret, whatever it is, I can take it." I looked at him, really looked. His face, his eyes, the same shade of blue as Tom's. And then, all at once, I saw it. Not in the photograph, not in the words. In him, the way he smiled, the way he tilted his head when he listened. It wasn't coincidence. It was truth waiting to be spoken. I drew a breath. "David," I said softly, "there's something you don't know about that summer." The memory returned in flashes. The rain, the laughter, the long afternoons by the lake that felt like stolen time. Tom. And I hadn't meant for it to go that far. We both knew I was promised to someone else. But that last week before he left, something inside me broke free from rules and expectations. Then he was gone. And a few weeks later, I knew something had changed. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mother. Not even John when he returned home. The world wasn't kind to women with secrets back then. My mother noticed, of course. She always did. And when she realized, she sat me down, her face pale. "You can't," she whispered. "You're engaged. Think of your future. Think of his." Her voice trembled as she said it, but her words were final. "No one must ever know. I'll take care of it." She sent me away for a few months, to a relative in another town. I was 23 when I gave birth to a baby boy. He was perfect, his eyes, those same blue eyes. I only held him once, long enough to memorize his face. Then my mother made arrangements, a quiet adoption, no records in my name. I returned home and married John a month later. We never spoke of it again. Now, 50 years later, that secret sat between us in the open. I met his gaze. "David," I said quietly, "I think I know what your father meant when he said he didn't mean to leave me twice." He stared at me. "What are you saying?" My eyes filled. "I think you were the first time." He blinked, confusion flickering, then disbelief. "Margaret, that's not—" I was young, alone. My family arranged the adoption. He never knew. My mother sent word to him later that I'd moved on, that I didn't want him back. David's voice dropped to a whisper. "And he believed her?" "He must have," I said. "He never came. I thought he forgot me." He shook his head slowly. "He didn't. He spent his whole life wondering what he'd done wrong." I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. "And I spent mine wondering why he never came back." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the sound of the lake against the shore. "I think that's why he took that photo," I said. "He must have found us that day, me holding you, before I was sent away. Maybe he saw us from a distance. Maybe he knew, but it was too late to stop what my family planned." David sat back, eyes wide. "He knew." "Maybe," I whispered. "Maybe he wanted to tell you. But how could he? The past was already gone." We didn't speak for a long time. The truth hung between us like something alive. Fragile, trembling, real. He finally said, "You're my mother?" The words sounded impossible out loud. I closed my eyes, feeling the ache of a lifetime surface all at once. I think so, I whispered. I can't prove it, but in my heart I know. He looked down, hands shaking. Then he laughed softly, though his eyes were wet. I don't even know what to feel. It's too much. I know, I said. You don't have to feel anything right now. Just breathe. He nodded. But then he looked at me again, searching my face the way one searches a memory. And slowly, something gentler crossed his features. All my life, he said, I felt like something was missing. Like there was a part of me I couldn't explain. Now I understand why you felt familiar. I smiled through tears. Maybe love remembers even when the mind forgets. He reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was warm, steady. For the first time in 50 years, I felt whole. But before I could speak again, he said quietly, "There's something else you should know." I looked up. "What is it?" He hesitated. "I did a DNA test last year, just for curiosity. I never knew my real mother's name, but the report matched me to someone, a living relative. The name on the file was Hayes." My heart stopped. "Hayes?" He nodded. "A woman named Clara Hayes. She lives 2 towns over." I froze. "Clara, my daughter, the one John and I raised." He held my gaze. "Margaret, that means your daughter and I." I pressed my hand to my mouth, the truth slamming through me like a wave. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The world tilted. The sound of the lake grew louder, and all I could whisper was, "Oh, God, what have I done?" The air in the little cafe felt still, like time had stopped for us, again. He sat across from me, hands wrapped around his coffee cup as if the warmth could steady his shaking fingers. My heart was quieter now, not pounding like before, just listening. "I never stopped writing," he said softly. "Every year on your birthday. Every year on ours." My throat closed. "Then why didn't I get them?" He smiled sadly. "I never sent them." I leaned back, trying to breathe through the ache. "Why would you write letters you didn't send, Robert?" He looked out the window, where a young couple was laughing over shared dessert. "Because I didn't think I deserved to interrupt your peace. You married, you moved on. I thought if I stayed quiet, I was being kind." I laughed quietly, not from humor, but from disbelief. "You thought silence was kindness?" He nodded. "Back then, yes. Now, I'm not so sure." Outside, autumn leaves brushed the glass like quiet witnesses. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Only the sound of clinking cups and distant laughter filled the space. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out the letter, the one I'd found in the old bookshop last week, the one written by him 50 years ago. "I found this," I said, placing it on the table. His handwriting, the same looping R, the same fading ink. It never reached me. He touched the paper like it was something sacred. "My God," he whispered. "That one was real. I gave it to your brother to deliver." I blinked. "David?" He nodded slowly. "He said he'd take care of it." "I thought you'd read it and chosen not to answer." A wave of silence swept through me. Half shock, half recognition. My brother had never mentioned it. And now, both men who shaped my youth had carried the same secret without knowing how deeply it had changed me. "I waited for months," I said quietly. "Then years. I thought you'd forgotten." Robert closed his eyes. "I never did." The cafe suddenly felt too small for everything unsaid between us. I wanted to be angry, at the lost years, at the letter that never came. But all I felt was sadness melting into something gentler. He reached across the table. His hand trembled as it met mine. "We lost a lifetime to one unsent letter," he said. "But I'm here now. If it's not too late." I looked at his face. Older, yes, but still the same man who once drew maps on napkins, who believed in second chances. "It's never too late to care," I said. "But maybe it's too late to start over." He nodded slowly, eyes damp but steady. "Then let's just be grateful we found the ending we were meant to have." We stayed like that for a long time. Two old souls sitting quietly as the world moved outside. No grand confessions, no promises. Just peace after years of wondering. When he finally stood, he left something on the table. A small envelope, sealed neatly. "For you," he said. "Don't open it now. Wait until the rain comes again." I smiled. "Still the poet." He smiled back. "Still the girl who made me believe in love." And then he was gone. Weeks passed. The season turned. One morning, rain drummed against my window. Soft, steady, patient. I made tea and sat by the fire, the envelope on my lap. Inside was a single page. His handwriting again, careful but shaking. "Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means we've both made peace with the past. I don't know how many tomorrows I have left, but I wanted you to know. You were my favorite what if. If I ever made you cry, I hope time has made it gentle. If I ever made you smile, I hope it still warms your heart when it rains." Ah. Tears blurred the ink. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it into the same book where I'd found the first one. A story that had waited half a century to finish itself. Outside, the rain slowed. Sunlight broke through the clouds like forgiveness itself. I stood by the window, watching the light spread across the garden. New, tender, quiet. Maybe love doesn't always mean forever. Sometimes it just means finding peace with the person who once held your heart and realizing you can finally let it rest. As I turned away, something on the porch caught my eye. A single white rose in a small vase, fresh from his garden. A note beneath it, in the same familiar hand, for the girl I never stopped writing to. And for the first time in 50 years, I smiled through tears. Because some love stories don't end. They just find their way home.